And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a little roll and write called Castle Party, or Flip and Write. These are games where you write things in squares and you're going to score points. And here, you're having a party at the castle. The mash. It was the monster mash. And everyone's having a party, and you're filling your castle. But your castle, I guess these monsters don't like hanging out together. Really, you want to put them together in groups. Skeletons with skeletons, and vampires with vampires. And you do that with Tetris shapes. But you make the Tetris shapes during the game. Are you confused? Well, stay confused, because here's the explanation. In this game, players are going to be filling in squares in their ballroom with various monsters. So, for example, here's a monster who's a skeleton, and they're represented by an X. Or we have here a Frankenstein monster that's represented by a square. And the way this happens is each round, one player goes first, and you're going to turn over a card. And this is going to show you a shape. So this shows an L shape here. And the player whose turn it is to go first will put out a monster, and that monster represents the square. Everybody else in turn order is going to be putting out monsters to finish off the shape, like this. And then everybody is going to draw the monsters in that shape somewhere here. But you have to draw it in the orientation it's facing you. So for example, for me, it looks like this. For somebody else, it's going to look like that to them. Now, before anyone draws the monster, each person has a special ability they can use once per game. If you don't use it, you'll get a couple points at the end. But you can change the rotation, and that affects everybody. Or you can rearrange the monsters. I might be like, I would like her to be here, and that affects everybody. Or you can turn one monster, maybe I want this vampire to be a skeleton also, and I write it down on my board, but that only affects me. Each of those powers is used once per game. When you fill these out, you can put them out here pretty much anywhere. You can even stick them out in the moat. Let's say I don't want a witch, so I stick her out here in the moat, and then I draw a square, the vampire, and the skeleton, like that. Putting people out in the moat means it's a way to get people the shape where you want it, but anyone in the moat is going to count against you at the end of the game. The exception here is the drawbridge. If you stick someone out in the drawbridge, they don't get you points, but they won't lose you points either. Now, at various points, when you're going through this shape decks, you're going to get different shapes. Like there's that shape, and this one's just a single square. But as time goes by, you will draw these clocks. These are stuck in the deck. In the second quarter, third, and fourth quarters of the deck, you'll have these cards. When the card shows up, everyone has to have an event happen. You have 3 events here, and you're going to score for one of them. If you score for fireworks, you get a point for every monster you have next to a window who can see the fireworks. If you do the conga, you pick the largest group of monsters that are connected to each other and get a point for each. And if you do the Toast of the Pumpkin King, you will draw a crown here. That's a pretty sloppy crown, but you'll draw a crown, and then you get 1 point for each different kind of monsters that's surrounding the king. So each time one comes up, you pick one of those to score. You can't score each one. You can't score one more than once. When the third one comes up, though, that's also going to end the game. At that point, you're going to score points for groups of monsters. Before I talk about monsters, I should mention that some of the cards in the game have a dot in them. That's the queen or the king of that group, and they'll score you bonus points at the end. There's also unicorns that are mixed in here, and unicorns aren't a monster. Unicorns are going to score you points for having groups of them on a board. So you want to have groups of unicorns. So I'm not going to draw out my board here because I'm super sloppy. I'm just going to show you the one in the back of the book, and you can see this is kind of what a finished board looks like. And then you'll score points for your biggest orthogonal grouping of each one, and then a king in that group will get a bonus point for every monster of its own type that it touches. You'll also score points for unicorns, depending on how many you have. If you only have one unicorn, you'll lose points, so you want to have more than one unicorn. And you'll get points for the different events that you did during the course of the game and any special abilities you didn't lose. Whoever has the most points is the winner. There is another side of the board, a more advanced side, a bigger one. This is called the rave version. And it's the same as the basic version, but some spots can only be occupied by specific guests, and you get points for having monsters of that type touching those different spots. Like, for example, skeletons like to go around the disc jockey thing here. And it's also a slightly bigger board to fit things into. I really am going to yell about the components here in this game. It comes with these markers, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the idea of writing down on the board, and a circle, a square, a triangle. But first of all, these rub off really easily, and also drawing some of the stuff like fangs and all, unless you're really careful, after a while, the ink on these was actually fading off without us touching it, and it's really hard to see. I mean, this is a good example of what a board looks like. That's like the perfect drawing, right, that they did there. And even that looks a bit confusing. The art on the cards is great. I love the way that the monsters look. They're cute little chibi monsters. That's fine. And, these cards, the card quality, everything fits in the box. But the markers really bring down the game a bit when it comes to component quality. Now, the idea of Castle Party is kind of fascinating. We're going to build the polyomino shape that then is placed on our board and strategically figure out what goes where. But it doesn't work out the way you think. You have a handful of monster cards as soon as you play when you draw a new one. But when you build the shape that's out there, I'm going to put this out. I want to put out a skeleton. I don't have any skeletons. So you're kind of stuck with what you have, first of all. Secondly, I can say, ooh, I want to put this skeleton piece here. Great. And then the next person puts out a vampire. I don't want that vampire there. 3 times over the course of the game, I can kind of change that shape, change how it comes out. But the game is longer than it's a long game. In fact, that's a minor point against the game. I thought it went too long. And at the end of the game, you're just like slamming shapes and trying to figure them out, sticking people in the moat. I felt like there was more cards than needed in the game. But anyway, those special things only happen a few times. So essentially, you are dealing with some random shape that you're sticking on your board. And that is my biggest problem with this game, is the fact that you are building this, but everyone else is building it. Everyone's looking at it from a different angle. And I don't care what strategy you might think there is. At the end of the round, you have a chaotic shape that you're sticking in your thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but then why go to all that work? Why spend time for us to be strategically placing these cards out to build this shape when I could have just made a bunch of random shapes and cards, flipped it over, and everyone draws it? The idea of drawing it from your direction is cute. I mean, it means everyone's boards are going to be different. You can't just copy the person next to you. But this game lengthens out unnecessarily because you're putting these cards out there. You are building this shape, but it's still random. I can't control what shapes my opponents are going to put out. So that's my biggest problem with the game. Second is the pens, as I already mentioned. Third is the length. It's just a little too long. And then fourth is the fact that the game itself is not interesting. Have groups that are the same together? I've done that so many times before. Big deal. And I put dots on the king and they get extra points for the ones around them. Okay. I don't know. I wasn't very impressed with this game. And the advanced game is just a slightly longer, more involved game. It doesn't really add much. Roll and wrights are a dime a dozen. There are many of them out there now. I mean, we're talking hundreds. I don't think every single one needs to stand out, like with this is so different. But when they do try to change the formula, I want to see something new and unique. I like the art. The theme is cute. Well, except for the fact that they're not diversifying. That's a weird theme. But, the theme, the funny monsters dancing together, that's kind of cute. But it's too much work for too little payout. That takes too long. And the whole time I'm thinking I can play so many other games in this same genre that are either faster, simpler, or more importantly, more fun. Not this one, unfortunately. That's Castle Party. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment, too much work for not enough fun.